Here we are.
Oh, you're just away again.
This meeting is being recorded by the host or a participant. Okay.
Yes, I am recording this. If somebody doesn't want to be recorded, just click yourself off. Tell me who Judy Davidson is. I don't know Judy Davidson.
Judy Davidson, I know that name.
No.
I don't know her.
I
Okay.
know that name, Judy
Oh, I could
Davidson.
Well, we have a gawker.
Have a gawker.
Like when I did Africa, remember that guy showed up? He was so
God,
knowledgeable,
that's
but
not-
it was
Hello?
creepy. Nobody knew who he
Oh,
was.
yeah, yeah.
Hello,
Hello, yeah,
Hello.
Judy, who, Judy,
I'm Judy. Unfortunately, I don't know how to show you my picture. I hike on Tuesday morning with Kay at Almaden Quicksilver. And you guys a lot of times will meet there that same day. And
Yeah.
somehow I found out about your travel stuff, and Croatia sounds like an interesting place. So
okay,
I don't know how to open up the screen so you can see me. If I knew how to do it, I would do it.
Herr Ringer.
Start video.
Morning,
Herr
Janice
Ringer.
and Chris.
Guten Tag.
Hi.
Hi, Janice, see you here.
Happy New-
Thanks.
August, so just wanted to wish you all a happy new year.
Man, thank you. Happy New Year to all of
Happy New Year to
you.
everybody.
Happy New Year to you too.
See you later on. Cheers.
Okay, it is
Indeed.
officially now,
Oh, there's that.
there we go.
There you are, you got it.
Okay,
I don't know what I did, but I did it.
okay, we have.
I
Jim
resemble
Dietz.
that.
I'm gonna give it one more minute. Jim Dietz just popped in.
Jim Dietz, great.
Dietz. Yes, it's the representative from the Northwest.
Hello, Jim.
Hello.
There. Good morning, Mr. Dietz.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Good. How's it going?
Hey, we're actually doing very well. No, let me just, somebody else is popping in. Okay, Jean is coming in. Okay, I am going to start.
It's Gene
this.
Robertson, yes.
Let me do this. Where is the Zoom? Here we go. Okay, share screen. Share.
Morning, Gene.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Gene.
Okay, can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna start this, being that it's 11 o'clock. We'd like to do a little bit. I'm gonna start in the Netherlands with a couple of pictures. And this is the beginning of this summer, of this last summer. And we are right now, okay, one more person coming. We are right now in the Netherlands. There is 3 boats you can see there. We're about to actually enter a lock. And this is in a town called Lemmer, which doesn't mean anything to anybody, but there we are in the very first boat. And so we've got Mark McCoy, who's not here today, but he's standing there talking to a gentleman. So as we go into the lock here, you have Mark, who's on the front of the boat with his lovely wife, Yangqin, and my wife, Anne, and they're all hanging onto the rope so that as the lock gets filled, it either goes up or goes down so that you're not banging too much into the sides. But this is a little bit of what the feel of what it's like to be inside of a lock. Here's another typical Dutch lock. This one is in a touristy area. And what you end up having to do here is you have the lock master standing there with a fishing pole, and the fishing pole at the end of it is a wooden shoe. So as you pass through, you have to pay a toll. And in this situation, it is €3. So Mark is standing here with his €3 in hand to put it into the shoe. So it's an interesting way to pay.
Yeah.
It's pretty high tech.
Yeah, most of the locks in Europe are free, but in the heavily tourist areas they're not. Here is Yangqin, Mark's wife. We have stopped in this little town, and she is just a consummate knitter. She made so many different things along our trip, and at the same time she's watching YouTube, but knitting on the back. There's Mark swimming. It was a really nice warm afternoon, and this was a town called Slot, and so Mark went out for a swim, and he's coming back to the boat here. In the town of Slogan, where we are, this is one of our favorite dishes that we had there. This is a mussel dish, but just one of Mark's absolute favorite dishes that we had there. After dinner, obviously you have to have some ice cream. So Yangqin has a little window she found where the man is supplying some ice cream. So another treat. This is one of our last nights in the Netherlands at a local park, having dinner, the four of us, before Mark has his motorhome delivered to him. So the next day, a man delivers Mark's motorhome. Mark had rented this in Prague, and the gentleman delivered it from Prague to the Netherlands, and
My
then
goodness.
Mark got on into this with his wife, and they drove it. I'll show you in a second where they drove it to. So we're in a park in the Netherlands. Mark, what he's doing here is doing the final check on the awning. Is everything okay? Because he has to give the final deposit on the motorhome. And it turned out that the motorhome was an absolute, almost brand new motorhome that he was able to rent on a one-way basis. So here is Mark and Yangqin. They're obviously excited about leaving, and you can see our boat through the back window there. They got off our boat, put all their luggage onto their motorhome, and they're off. So where they are heading towards, and I wasn't able to draw this, but you can see in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the Netherlands there. They ended up driving from the Netherlands to Bremen, up towards Hamburg, down to Berlin, over to Warsaw, from Warsaw down to Prague in the Czech Republic, from Prague to Vienna, Vienna to Budapest, Budapest in Hungary. They drove through down that river you can see towards Zagreb, which is in Croatia, and from Zagreb, which is now in Croatia, down to Split. So this was a one-way trip on their motorhome. So it's unbelievable that you can do this in Europe. You can rent a motorhome in one place and drop it off. And I mean, it was a phenomenal thing that Mark was able to do.
Somebody
So,
clock.
if anybody has any questions or any thoughts along the way, obviously just chime in. Here we are now. As I said, Mark ended up driving to Zagreb, which you can see on the map there. And then he drove down to Split, where I've got the red box around it. And Split is where we met. And this was the only photo I got of Jim Caldwell and his wife Christie and my wife Ann getting off our airplane in Split after we had a very long flight. It was just a very bad flight. But anyway, we arrived in Split. So Mark was already in Split. He had secured this spot, and this was in a town called Trogir. And so the parking places in Croatia are generally right on the water, right on the Adriatic. I mean, they're just spectacular parking areas. So that night when we got off the airplane, in the dark, we found the motorhome And we were able to spend our first night with Mark and Yangqin. So Ann and I were able to spend it in the motorhome. And Jim and Christie were able to get an Airbnb in the little town of Trogier, which you're going to see in a few minutes. This is right next to. So the next morning, we woke up and Mark takes me over and we have our cup of coffee watching the morning, little bit of rain come down. So it was just a great place to start the day. We woke up in this town. It's just a little bit north of Split, called Trogier. And you can see there's the motley crew. And as we start to go down the coast, you're going to start to see all 6 of us traveled in this motorhome. This is the little town of Trogier. It's an island that you're looking from, an old Croatian town, but it's just an absolutely beautiful little town. This is one view to the mainland from the island. This is another view in another direction. So you can boat generally around the island, except there's one bridge, only small boats can go underneath. But everybody has to go. You can see these larger boats have to come in the other side of the island. This is the Adriatic Sea, but it's just a marvelous place. So Trogier was one of our first spots where we stopped, and here are the 3 ladies looking for a good place to have lunch. And Trogier is an old town, so everything is very narrow as you walk around. Here's Anne going, okay, should we have lunch here? It's only because she wanted to, because everything is purple and it's her favorite color. She wanted to have lunch, but we didn't have lunch here. We found another place called Christians, which I didn't get a picture of, but I did get a picture of the motley crew of the 3 of us drinking beer at our place where we finally found. There's Jim, myself, and Mark. Any comments here, Jim?
No, the beer was very good.
So again, Trogier is a great town. We're just walking around, but after our lunch, obviously somebody has to have ice cream. So Christie's on her phone talking to somebody important that's not there, but talking, and we're all enjoying our morning. So in Croatia, this is a little bit of the area where we're going to be moving down towards. Our first place we ended up, you can see the island of Trogier there. You can see Split right here, Trogier. We now jump in the motorhome from Trogier and we go up to this place called Skarden. And you can see from the Adriatic, the water actually goes in, and it's a very long area that you're going to see in a second. So Skarden is just a beautiful little town, and this little waterway is a sailing area off the Adriatic. So you sail in, and you've got a huge, beautiful area to sail around in. You can see Skarden there. It's just a small little village. And then you're going to see some of our pictures going up this river. So I was just trying to give you a little bit of perspective of where we are. This is Skarden, actually, the actual picture of it. A beautiful little Croatian village just on the side of this beautiful little inlet. Jim overnighted and Christie overnighted in an Airbnb here. And the 4 of us, Mark and Yangqin and Ann and I, ended up staying in the motorhome in this town. So the next day, we ended up going up the river from Skarden. And it's one of the prettiest places that this boat goes up. So at near the end of the river, what you end up having is an old hydroelectric facility dating back to 1893. It was actually the first European hydroelectric facility put into operation. It was originally designed to power the streets of the town nearby. And it was actually the first city in the world with street lights using AC power. And the AC power came from this hydroelectric facility up this river called the Scarden River that we're going to start to go up. As you go out into this facility, what you end up having is that there are so many natural springs that are feeding this river along the way. And we're right now seeing the waterfalls and the natural springs along with the river that are feeding this hydroelectric facility. I mean, it's a phenomenal place. This is one of the pools from the river, and it's a combination of the springs that are feeding this and the river that are flowing through this waterfall area. This is again further up the river and is one of the old Croatian hydroelectric places, and you're going to see a couple of different places like this, but it's so beautiful because it's all authentic and all original. All through the wars, a lot of it didn't get ruined because it was so important to produce electricity. Here's Jim and Christie. You can see behind them one of the pools of fresh water that is just gurgling out of the ground, that is continuing to feed the river. One of the old turbines that no longer is in use, this was the hydroelectric turbines out of that facility I first showed you. You can see the immensity of how much power, hydroelectric power, was being created to feed the area. But this is one of the old turbines from the power plant. One of the springs, I mean, it's unbelievably beautiful, clear water. You can see the fish in there. I mean, I got so many pictures of fish that it's incredible, and they're just sitting in the water, just waiting for bait to come along. But this is all part of this riverbed.
Fish there.
Here's Christie. You can see more fish. Beautiful, clear water because it's all spring fed.
You're running behind on your picture, Gary.
Say again, Mark?
I'm not sure whether I'm looking at the same picture that you are describing.
Okay, are you seeing the picture of Christie standing there looking at the fish?
No, I am not. I'm seeing a picture of the power plant and the waterfall that's next to it.
Okay, what is everybody seeing?
We're seeing Christie.
I
Yeah.
see Christie.
I think it's your computer, Mark.
I see the fish.
Okay.
And then what kind of fish are they? Trouts?
I think, Bernd, I honestly don't know. I think that they are trout. It's a freshwater fish, obviously,
No,
but there are so many of them along this river.
I'm not seeing that.
Mark, I think it's your computer just not processing enough as it's going. So after we finished going up part of this river and enjoying our day, this was an evening out meal. We found a great little restaurant, and there's the 6 of us having a wonderful meal. And obviously every meal had to have wine and beer. Okay, going back here a little bit to one of the original pictures, you can now see where we started in Trogier, and we went up to Sibenik, Sibenik, and there is a river there. If you follow it up to a town just on the edge of the red line called Knin, Knin. And this is a very important town you're going to see in a second, and it has to do with the Croatian War of Independence, which was fought there in 1991 to 1995. And it was okay, so we're now in this town of Knin, Knin. With our motorhome, and all 6 of us have been traveling in this motorhome that Mark has driven down, and it turned out to be just a wonderful place to use. So we're now in the town of Knin there, Knin, and you can see the town of Sibenik. So Sibenik is where the pictures of the fish and the hydroelectric plant was in that waterway right there. But you can see the river went all the way up into Knin. And Knin turned out to be a very important place for the battles that they had, because you had the Bosnian Herzegovina Serbian people attacking the Croatians, and this all happened back in 1992, so it was all in our lifetime, obviously. It's these arrows, I didn't put them on, I took a picture of it. This was the method of attack, or how the Serbs and the Bosnians were attacking the Croatians. So in this town of Knin, we arrived here, and this is again another picture of it, and because you're going to see the real pictures in a second, but this was a fortification on this river that we originally started on, going up to the Knin Fortress that was built in the 9th century. The Ottomans snatched this place in 1522. And then the Austrians snatched it. Then the French took it. In the 17th, 18th century, Napoleon was involved. I mean, this fort here you're going to see, or fortress, was so strategic in its importance that it was always attacked and trying to be taken over. This was the entrance to the fortress, and obviously Jim is trying to get into it. We had no problem. There were no tourists here. Nobody comes here for whatever reason, but you're going to see some very interesting pictures of this place. It was high on a hillside, and as I said before, it was built in the 9th century, and very strategic. But high above this, you could see all the rail lines, very strategic. So all of the Bosnian freight that had to go to the ocean through Croatia had to go through this valley of Knin. So obviously everything had to see. You could see everything from up above.
Rain and snow on the state in recent weeks, swamp overloads, triggering.
A lot of this, somebody's got their Jeff, if you mute yourself, I appreciate it. But these facilities, these towns below, basically were bombed during the 1992 war. So we're up in the fortress right now looking down. You can see some of the old Croatian towns, but because Serbia wanted this as a strategic place, they ended up bombing most of these villages down below, and a lot of this has all been rebuilt. We're up in the fortress, but you can see, being up in the fortress, how far you could see in the distance. So it was very strategic, because it was that river that fed to the Adriatic, which fed to the Mediterranean. Why this was so strategically important, this town. Up in the fortress here was Jim, who obviously didn't abide by the rules.
He almost lost his head.
Almost. And here was Mark, who almost lost his head.
Where?
I hope they checked that blade out really well before they did that.
Well, Mark's not on the call, so maybe he didn't check it well enough. So again, up in the fortress here, you could start to see why they built it, why it was so strategic, how far out you could see. So you could see your foe coming from all directions. And they all wanted access to that river to be able to get to the Adriatic, get to the Mediterranean. So even that far back, why this fort was so important. From up in the fort, this is some of the beginning shots of that river that I showed you before, called the KRKA or Karka River. It was so important because you could go down this river all the way, as I said before, to the Adriatic. And anyway, it was just an interesting picture from the beginning of where the river started. Again, another picture from the fortress looking down at the town where the rail facilities were, where the people lived, and almost all of the towns. I'm sure Jim is contemplating, because he told us that most all of this infrastructure you see was bombed by the Serbs in their quest to conquer the area, and most of it's been rebuilt. So after we left the fortress, another great little restaurant we found, and this man told us, he says, I can't remember the dollar amount, but it was very minimal. He says, let me make lunch for you. And so he brought this plate you can see in the middle of the table out, had so much meat and fries on it. And the six of us sat here drinking beer most of the afternoon, eating just an amazing feast this man prepared for us in this restaurant. So here's Jim and Yangqin. We're now have left that area and we're back on the Adriatic. Jim and Christie were staying in an Airbnb, obviously, most of the time. And one of the Airbnbs they stayed in, they had no idea where it was. So we parked down below and we sent the girls up to find the Airbnb. And you can see Christie, she's very fit. But this was a hill that was stressing her out, going out. We were trying to find his Airbnb. We eventually found it, and it was another 2 stories up with a beautiful view out onto the Adriatic. So the eventual Airbnb was phenomenal, but getting there almost, it was a stressful hike up the hill. Am I exaggerating, Jim?
No, I don't think you're talking enough about it, but that's all right. They got their review, and we had a wonderful spot there, but we did not even leave our room because we knew what we had to do to get back up to the room, because you guys had taken the vehicle. Well, even when we got there, we left the vehicle down the road, and when you saw Christie and Yangqin, that was already our second. No, we were on the third leg of that road getting up there.
Anyway, the end result was Jim got a really nice Airbnb overlooking with a phenomenal view, but getting there was no what do you call it, ski lift to get him up there. So,
How about a donkey? How about a donkey?
a donkey could have worked, but it didn't work either. So that was Jim's Airbnb, and here was Mark and Yangqin and Ann and I's facility. So on the left-hand side, you can see the motorhome. So the Europeans have a really great infrastructure for campers. So almost every town has these great parks that you can spend the night in with electricity and facilities, and you can see we're obviously not the only people. But this was our motorhome spot, and this was in a town called Omis, O-M-I-S. In the upper right-hand corner of the picture, you can see the rock. That was the entrance to this motorhome park. you could see many years ago, somebody had taken a pickaxe or blasted through that rock to be able to have motorhomes come in. Anyway, it's a very narrow entrance to get in here. Anyway, here is Omis, a beautiful Croatian town, again, very old. Omis is on the bank of a river called the Cetina River. And this little town goes back to the 10th century. So you can see very, very old facility. So Omis was a wonderful place to be able to stop, have lunch. We walked around. I mean, just saw just amazing things. I'm going to show you just a little, this picture is the only picture I took of the fort, but this fort is just above the town. This is a picture I took off the internet, but just to tell you a quick story about this. When the Venetians would come down the Adriatic and would attack this town of Omis and many of the other towns along the Adriatic coast, back in the 10th century, they ended up building this fort, and this fort is high above Omis. And it was not built for a king or for a lord or anything, but it was built for when the town was being attacked by the Venetians or the Turks or whoever was attacking it. All of the town would scamper up into this little facility, and they would pull a drawbridge, and it would be almost impossible for them to be able to be attacked. But then after the marauders had left, they would leave this fort and go back into town. So it was an interesting thing to understand. I had no idea. I thought all of these places were always built for kings and lords, but no, it was just to keep the people alive when they were raping and pillaging and whatever they were doing down below. So the town of Omis, because it is so small and it's right on the Adriatic, and tourism is just starting to grow like crazy there. The people in Croatia are right now building a bypass because the town can hardly handle the traffic that's going through right now. So as you can see what they've done, they were building this bypass and connecting it to the rocks on the other side.
Really?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff.
How are they gonna?
Say again, Mark?
I was just wondering how they're gonna get, because I see that bridge is like halfway across. It's like, how are they building this thing?
You know what? Not my problem. Not my problem. I don't know. It's far more engineering than I have any information.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So we now left this town called Omis, and we're now going to the next amazing town. This is called Makarska, which obviously nobody's ever heard of, but this picture depicts the Turks trying to recapture Makarska in 1571. I got it off the internet, but it gives you an idea of what Makarska, I'm going to show it to you in a second, what it looks like. The Romans originally sent their soldiers back in 200 AD to Makarska to be able to hang out. It was just a beautiful place to hang out. The kingdom of Croatia in the 12th century was conquered by the Republic of Venice a century later. The Makarska coastal area, I'm reading this, fell to the Turks in 1499. And in 1646, Venice recaptured the coastline. And then the Austrian army again recaptured Makarska in 1797. And it remained in Austrian hands until Napoleon conquered it. And so you can see how important this little area was. But this little town here of Makarska, there's what it looks like now. I don't know if I'm exaggerating, but it's just spectacular. Where we are is we're at a restaurant. And we're looking through the marina area at the houses on the far side, but it's just one of the prettier areas. Any thoughts here, Jim?
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with you. Makarska was our favorite port. And just about every night we were on some bay or canal, and Makarska has a very vibrant waterfront. Lots of restaurants and lots of boats, lots of activity. And I would definitely put that on a top of the list for any visitors that are headed that way. And I think the other thing that's important to know about Croatia, what we found anyway, meals were very reasonably priced, and the food, we were all very impressed with the food, and we would strongly recommend a little land tour of Croatia. And if you saw on Barry's map, we're really down exploring the Dalmatian coast, and it's very, very narrow, and it comes down, and I don't know how long it is, but it's the border going into is it Montenegro?
Yep.
Is just a couple of miles. So we're in a very small part of Croatia, but it's the water part and absolutely spectacular water.
Yeah. So again, as I said before, motorhomes are so valued there that all the parks where we parked, I didn't show any, I'm not going to show you any pictures of the park, but anyway, they're right on the water. And the water, there's a promenade area from all along the coast. In this promenade area, you can see where the three of them are standing. It's just, it's miles long, and there are vendors all along selling you anything, any food, anything that you want, but it in most beautiful beaches, and this is all the Adriatic in the background.
And if I'm not mistaken, Barry, if you look just to the left of Mark's Head, isn't that the hotel on the other side of the bay?
Yes. Yes.
So that gives you an idea of how large the bay is, and so much activity.
Yeah, so they don't have as many lawyers running their lives there as we do here, but they have so many amazing water toys in the Adriatic that you swim out to be able to enjoy all along the coast here in Makarska. I mean, it's just it's an amazing area. If somebody wanted to spend 2 weeks there, you would absolutely fall in love with the place.
If you are thinking of the beach area, it's a pebbly beach. It's not a sandy beach, FYI.
Right. So we now left Makarska, and we're back in the motorhome, all 6 of us, and we're starting to go again inland a little bit. And we start to see these beautiful lakes. I mean, it's just spectacular scenery in Croatia. So there's the 6 of us. We pulled over, obviously, and got a really nice picture of the 6 of us overlooking the wonderful lakes on the inland areas of Croatia. And so this a real quick story. This, as we had pulled over on the side of the road, there was a vendor, this lady here selling things. And so we went over and we bought some fruits and vegetables and liquors. And she was just an absolute sweetheart. Am I exaggerating, Jim?
Nope, she was, and quite a character.
Quite a character. Her family has been the oils and in the background her family makes, and the liqueurs and things that we ended up buying her family makes. So it's an old Croatian family.
Yeah.
So
Was the language, did you have any language barriers in terms of English versus the native language of Croatia?
Absolutely not. I mean, everybody speaks English.
That's good.
Yep. I mean, English, and the common denominator is the fact that they want some of your money. I mean, the Croatians, for some reason, and I don't fully understand it, is the government has, in the last 10 years, lost population year after year. The young people continue to leave this area to look for Western Europe for more opportunity because there's no economic opportunity in Croatia other than tourism. I mean, they have so much natural beauty and so much to offer, but the young people don't stay. Anyway, so this map right here, this is just very interesting map just to show you. Croatia, you can see in the upper part up here where it says, obviously says Croatia. Then right after that, you can see the Croatian line going all the way down to the Adriatic, down to the water where my pointer is. Then you have the country of Bosnia-Herzegovina that juts through the middle of Croatia all the way to the water. So when a Croatian wanted to go from one end side of Croatia to the other side, he would go down this road, but he used to have a border check. So right on the border here, he'd have a border check with the Bosnians. He'd go through Bosnia. He'd come to the other side. He'd have to check into Croatia again on the other side. So this was when they divvied up Yugoslavia. This was a negotiation for Bosnia-Herzegovina for them to be able to have access to the Adriatic because it was a country that was landlocked, but they allowed this little sliver to go to the Adriatic. Well, this caused lots of problems for the Croatians. So the Croatians, you could see that arrow, decided to build a bridge. So they built a bridge, you're going to see in a second, across to this peninsula. And then we will drive across the peninsula. We're going to drive through this town of Przetska, continue to drive south to a town called Stone, S-T-O-N, and you're going to see this in a second. But we bypass this little area right here. And this has made life for the Croatians so much easier because instead of having to go through border checks with Bosnia, they now can go across this bridge and then bypass Bosnia-Herzegovina. So
where is Serbia in this whole thing?
Serbia, Joe, is off to the right. Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia is just on the other side of it.
Okay.
Serbia is the aggressor right now in that area. It's the Russian-backed group. Anyway, that's another story.
I'll tell you an interesting story later on about when I was growing up about a Croatian friend of mine.
Okay.
I don't want to bore the group right now.
You're never boring us, Joe. So, okay, look, do you want to tell the story or go ahead?
So hurry up.
I grew
hurry
up
up,
in
Barry.
Milwaukee,
Let's get to
and
the bridge. The bridge is
went to
spectacular.
a school with a Croatian kid. And we were like, this was 65 years ago, but I still remember this. We talk about what we wanted to do when we grew up. This was a Croatian kid, big guy. His parents owned a little corner grocery store that we'd walk to every morning and buy a gallon of milk, bring home to the family. So we knew him pretty well, knew his parents, and he was a nice, friendly guy, big guy for his age. And they asked him once, what do you plan to do when you grow up? And his honest to God answer was, well, I want to grow up and kill Serbians.
Well,
this was from like a 12 and 13-year-old kid.
Well,
I've never forgotten that. Just the hatred those two countries had for one another. It was like a disease.
Well, it's religious, but I'm not going to go there. It's just, you got the Croats, you got the Muslims, you got the Catholics, everybody's just a mixture of whatever. Anyway, let's just go on to the bridge. So the bridge there, you can see where the pointer is. Sorry, other direction. The bridge, here it is. It got built and it was finished in July of 2022. We were there in September of 2022. So the bridge had just finished being built.
It is spectacular.
Oh, let's see the picture.
Yeah. This is obviously one I took off the internet. This is a picture I took out of the car of the bridge. I mean, it's just, they did a phenomenal job, and it's going to make life so much easier for the Croatians. And let me just tell you a real quick one. This year, January, which is 3 weeks away now, is when Croatia has now joined the Schengen or the European Union. So they are now a Schengen country, meaning that their currency is, which was called the kuna, Kuna, is now changed as of January, a couple of weeks ago, is now going to be part of the euro. So you can see with this spectacular coastline, all of this, I mean, they're just getting primed for tourism there.
That's right.
So on the other side of the bridge is this, again, spectacular little village that we drove the motorhome into, but the drive into the village was so narrow that we just barely made it and just pulled over on the side and parked, and Mark ended up parking. And a lady comes up to us and says, "You can't park here, you can't park here." We said, "Okay, we're going to park here, goodbye." And we just parked and we walked away. But anyway, this is a really cute little fishing village. So we found a great place to have lunch, and you can see right on the water of this little fishing village. The picture didn't come out as clear because of the too much sunlight in the background, but there are the two motley members of our six couplet. Any comments here, Jim?
I was trying to, we had a funny story there. I forget what it was, but Mark had, or it was you expecting clams, or was it prawns?
I was looking for prawns.
Yeah. They were cocktail shrimp.
Yes, so they, I was expecting there was seashore village, fishing village, they're gonna have nice big prawns, and there's like these little cocktail prawns, so anyway. So anyway, going back to this bridge again, and I just want to show you where we are. Mrijesta is that cute little village I just told you about. So we ended up driving down the road, and we're now going to take you to a place called Ston, S-T-O-N. And it's extremely important. You'll understand it in a second. But I just wanted to show you where it is in the overall scheme of things. So Ston, here it is, was first established by the Romans in 167 BC. This is how important this area was, or this little area was. And why was it important? Salt. Salt. So salt was as important in that time period, all up until the 1700s, as important as gold. And so what you can see in the background are salt flats, and the little town of Stone, or S-T-O-N, is right in front there. And all through this time period, these were salt flats that came in, and anyway, salt was so important to the area that when the Venetians attacked, that's what they were after, was salt to keep their food going. And when the Turks would come from Turkey north and attack Ston, they wanted salt. So anyway, very important. So how did they protect themselves? They built a wall. So here's Jim and Christie. You're going to see more pictures of this wall, but the wall was all around the town of Ston, and they were built back in 1358 because everybody was marauding this area, taking their salt. Eventually, they started to build a wall, 7-kilometer long wall around Ston. So there you can see the walls. I mean, it would have been formidable to get over the top of that mountain, climb down, get to a wall, climb over. Anyway, an interesting, very interesting place. Any thoughts here, Jim?
No, that was a great hike. And if you look up over Barry's head to the right, you can see even a higher fortress wall.
Right. Yep. It's 7 kilometers long, this wall. And you can see what they were protecting, you know, was the walls were protecting, again, the salt flats. That's what Ston was known for, was salt. So we now are going to leave Ston and we're going to Dubrovnik. So we arrived, I had rented this little villa above Dubrovnik, and it was 3 bedrooms to our left here, which you can't quite see, but 3 bedrooms. And this was our sitting area outside. Here was the bedrooms there. Each one of our bedrooms looked like this. So we had a window that opened up to the Adriatic in the background and the town of Dubrovnik in the foreground. So you can see the Dubrovnik walls. But so we had a wonderful place to be from. There was a view from Mark's room. You know, you can see the walls. You can see Dubrovnik in a minute, but that's Dubrovnik in the foreground. And these places are just amazing. The only negative of some of these places, maybe I could talk about a negative, and that is access, because these are old places. They didn't make them so you could drive a car up to them, right? So you drive down through this little old town, and you have to lug the luggage up the side of the hill to be able to eventually get to your place. Am I exaggerating, Jim, about that?
Not at all. And Mark and Yangqin had been on the road. They rented the RV, as Barry said, up in Amsterdam, and they'd been on the road for 2 months. So they had luggage that was some of the largest 2 pieces of luggage I've ever seen, and laden down with a lot of stuff that they had taken from home, because they have an RV at home. So they brought some, but they knew what they needed for their RV. So they schlepped some of that stuff from Incline Village in Tahoe over to Amsterdam to see Barry and Ann, and then onto their RV. And this is the end. This is our last day of the RV. So Mark was trying to navigate these narrow streets with an RV.
So here's a side point, is where we are now at this little villa with the 3 bedrooms overlooking Dubrovnik is where Mark has to give up the RV. So we have now been coordinating with the person who's coming from Prague to Dubrovnik to pick up the RV. So that afternoon at 2 o'clock, Mark can give them back the RV. So that person will drive it back to Prague. I mean, it was unbelievable logistic, phenomenal backing. Anyway, let me continue. This is Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik, one of the more beautiful places in the world. The unfortunate thing about Dubrovnik was that in the early 1990s, the Serbs attacked Croatia. And one of the things that they did was attack this unbelievably beautiful old place. And they put siege to this town. So I've got a couple of pictures here of what happened. So this in the early 1990s, this was the attack to Dubrovnik. I mean, the idea of trying to shell a city like this is just insane.
But 30 years ago, my gosh, just yesterday.
Yeah, it's kind of like Ukraine, right? We're going to look back at this as the same craziness, but this ethnic craziness is just, it continues anyway. So this is what that square now looks like. So you can kind of see everything looks beautiful and spectacular as if this has always been. But this main square street, here's another picture of what it looked like. in that time period, in the 1990s, early 1990s. I mean, they just bombed the shit out of it and burned it. And it's horrible. But the Croatians have brought it back to spectacular beauty, because it's hard to burn stone.
Yes, it is.
So, okay, here is another interesting picture. So Dubrovnik being way down there, obviously, in the Adriatic, you can see it in the background. We took a gondola up the side of the mountain. And so you can see Gary a little bit on the left, there is Arm and Laurel, and then you have Yangqin and Mark and Jim and Christie, and I'm taking a picture of them. Okay, now as we take a picture of them, this is the most unbelievable thing. We turn around and we see the other couple who is going to be on the boat with us, sitting above us, not planned. Am I exaggerating here?
No, we're absolutely shocked. And then Jim is on the Zoom call with us. And they had just flown in from the States, I think via Frankfurt, I think.
Yes.
And they had spent, I think, 1 day, and they had arrived the night before. So they were out sightseeing, and we wound up in the same spot.
It was unbelievable, on the top of a mountain overlooking Dubrovnik, and we get seated next to the people we're going to spend another week with. I mean, it was so coincidental. Anyway, so from up above, this is what Dubrovnik looks like from the Hilltop Cafe. You can see what a spectacular town this was, and why it is such a renowned site.
And Barry, that picture is absolutely spectacular. I don't have anything like that, but this might be a good area to where you're able to see and take tours of what people call the upper wall. And you can see the perimeter wall. You can walk that entire thing from one side down by the water all the way around and down to the other side of the water. And inside Dubrovnik, it is a spectacular town in there with a maze of streets that if you found a good restaurant and you wanted to try and tell somebody or try and get back there yourself, you would have a very difficult time unless you really paid attention to your landmarks. Great excitement in that town.
Yeah, I don't know if we have any Game of Thrones people here, but Game of Thrones, a lot of it was filmed here.
Can you drive a
The
car
other
in there?
amazing thing that we learned with this is this town, we were there the middle to end of September, and they were shutting down a couple of weeks after we left, and everyone was leaving. And they don't come back until late April.
Yeah, it's.
Can you drive a car in there, or is it all pedestrians?
I think it's most. I was going to say I don't remember seeing cars, but I think it's mostly pedestrians.
Yeah, it was all pedestrian. Yeah.
Yeah, just in the foreground here, you can't see it. I can't point it out, but right here where my pointer is. This is where our hotel, where our villa that we rented was, right? You could see how close to the walls we were. So in the evening time, it was really easy for us to walk into the walls, and we were right in the middle of the city.
And how was it coming home after wine?
Well, it was, you got some exercise.
It's all uphill.
It was a great spot though, Barry, with spectacular views.
Yeah, it was. This view right now, I end up taking this picture, and then I took this one just to the right, just to give you an idea of what the place looks like. So you can see I mean, it's Dubrovnik is just a beautiful area with lots of waterways. And if you look in the background, you'll see some of the islands that you're going to see us visiting in a few minutes. Those the Adriatic is just some of the more beautiful places to visit. The Adriatic Sea, and because there's no real tidal influence, it's almost like a lake.
If you look in the bottom right-hand corner, about an inch or two up, you'll see a marina. And the number of boats in all of these waterways is just staggering. And they do a lot of charter boats. So if anybody is interested in charter boats, they have got a company over there, ACI or something like that, that has got lots and lots of bases all over the Adriatic.
Okay, so now we're going to go into Dubrovnik a little bit. So from our villa, as we would walk down, and I didn't understand this till later, but Dubrovnik is deep down. So to get into the town, you walk through the walls, and then all of a sudden it goes deep down into it. This gives you a little bit of perspective of what you have to do to get down into actual Dubrovnik. So this is the area, just part of Dubrovnik, the water area. Again, the background there, you can see our villa was up there. You can see how, just a beautiful view that we had down and above it, what there was. But it's just a great little waterway. There's Jim and Mark deciding which boat. Oh, I like that boat. No, I want that boat. Anyway, it's a great little harbor area. On the outside of the walls, this was an interesting spot. The Croatians have now, obviously it doesn't go way back, but the Croatians have built a cafe. So you walk through the walls and you can actually, if you want to go swimming, there's Christie checking the water out to see if it's warm enough to go swimming. And she goes, no, I don't think so. But you can walk through the walls on the outside of the walls, and they built a cafe out there. So when we walked out there, we were going to sit down and have a drink out there, except that they were having a wedding. So we were able to walk around a little bit, but it was all being set up for a wedding. But you can see the beautiful, the Dubrovnik walls on your right-hand side, the Adriatic Sea on the left, and this beautiful waterway. I mean, it's spectacular. So in Dubrovnik, we're always looking for a restaurant. Here's Mark trying to figure out, is this a good restaurant? Should we stay here or should we eat? Well, if you look at one of the signs that says no euros, right? People in Croatia before we were there really didn't want to deal with the euro. They wanted kunas. They wanted their own currency. They got a little bit, they felt they got more for it. So some of the restaurants, you had to have local currency to eat there. Well, this restaurant turned out to be a really good restaurant, and they didn't open till 5 o'clock in the evening. It took no reservations, but so in the evening time, Anne sat out in front and we basically stood in line waiting to get into this restaurant. Turned out to be just a wonderful restaurant. So here, just a little bit of an overview. This is where we are now going to. We're in Dubrovnik on the bottom right-hand corner. We're now going to get aboard a boat that we all got aboard. You'll see it in a second, but this is how we're going to travel. We're going up to Mljet, Korčula, out to the island of Vis, Hvar, Milna, and back to Split. The boat that we were on, this is what it looked like. It's 157 foot long. It was built in 2021, so it was almost a brand new boat. It would hold 38 paying guests, but there was only 30 aboard at the time. It has 19 staterooms. You can see the hot tub at the front. It had an ocean, a saltwater pool in the back, but it never got filled. But that's the boat. So the day we arrived, here's Gary and Laurel arriving with their luggage. This is where we finally found the boat. That's a whole nother story, but this is in Dubrovnik. The boat, Jim and Mark deciding what luggage is whose, and we're now going aboard. Mark, this is the inside of the boat a little bit, going into his cabin. We each had our own cabin. This is the saltwater pool I mentioned a few minutes ago. It never got filled. I have really no reason to want to swim in the saltwater because the Adriatic is nice to swim in. There's Lanette and Jim talking with people on the back of the boat, because we had about 30 people who became friends over a week. This is our captain. So as we left, how the day would go, this was our first day. He would go out between one of the islands, and he took this 157-foot boat, and this is how he steers it. And he was looking for a place so that in the morning time, we would have breakfast aboard the boat. And by about 10:30, 11 o'clock, he has found a swimming spot for us, and he would stern tie to an island. And so he's right now backing up to this island so he can tie to a tree so we can swim. Here's Mark and Yangqin watching. And here is Christie, which is the the queen of the boat, making a frontal view. Jim checking out the hot tub, making sure that it's warm enough. But here's, as I was saying, that the boat would tie to the island, and then we would spend the next few hours swimming here until they had lunch ready. Then you'd come back aboard, maybe sit in the hot tub for 10 or 15 minutes, have lunch. And by the time you finished your lunch, you maybe brushed your teeth, rested a little bit. They have now left, and they have gone on to the actual island. But here's Mark. He grabbed a board to go paddling around on. There's a little bit of R&R with Christie and a glass of, I think it's wine. Would you say it's wine, Jim, or?
No, she doesn't drink wine. I think
I didn't think so. It's too dark.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, well, she's not here to defend herself. Well, it's some kind of hard liquor, I know that. Anyway, and there's Jim. This is the relaxing up in the upper deck. Outside of our room, each one of us had a little sitting area. This is what the sitting area was outside of our room. So on the island, this is an island we're on now called Majet. And so again, old Croatian town, just very spectacular, beautiful place to walk around. We walked around. There's another little lake, and in the middle of the lake is not a big deal, but this was a, oh God, what did they call it?
Monastery?
Thank you, Jim, monastery. So as we're walking around, you can see the monastery in the background around this lake. Mark and I are drinking beer, walking, deciding what we need to do. And then another motley group of people decide on their bicycles, they didn't want to walk around, they wanted to cycle around. So here everybody shows up, and they didn't imbibe with us, but there's Jim and Lanette and Jim and Christie. Any thoughts about your cycling tour, Jim?
Great time, easy, flat cycling, had a great time.
Good. So one of the things that we need, Mark needed to get a haircut. So we found a place for, I think it was €5 to get his haircut. So, which is good. That evening, they took us, they had reserved this restaurant on top of the hill. This man here, Croatian gentleman, had a really nice restaurant, and he told us stories and gave us some hard liquor to drink. It was just a fun place. This is how Roko, our boat that we were on, how things stacked. So you would come into these islands, and these 157-foot boats, you think that it's one of there's only one of it. Well, there's not, because we pulled in, another guy pulls in, another guy pulls in. It's like a 30-foot boat, stack to stack. And anyway, this is how they run these islands.
At one point in time, Barry, I think we were told that they have about 200 of these types of boats. It's a very, very popular way to get around the Dalmatian coast and the islands of Croatia.
Yep. Okay, we're now coming to one of the most interesting islands out of all the Dalmatian coast, and this is an island called Vis, V-I-S. And this won't mean anything to you. I'll show you again later, but there's Vis Bay, which I'll show you where the submarine base is. And remember this town Kolmiza, but these two are the phenomenal places. So we're now going to go around this island. They reserved this company reserved these Jeeps. So they put us all into Jeeps to drive us around this island. And they put a guy in charge of us that I am not exaggerating. He could have come out of a movie somewhere. His blue eyes, his accent, he must have been in the Croatian War, because he brought so much authenticity to this military island of Vis that you're going to see. This hole you're looking at right here is where anti-aircraft guns would be put in. They built this into the island. And then when there was an attack or somebody going, they would roll it out and they would start firing. So it was just a very interesting part of the island. Can you describe this guy better, Jim, for me?
No, he is truly, I think, one of the Croatian fighters, and made no bones about being in a couple of the wars. And he gave the best explanation of that whole region, relating it to as when you were a kid on the playground, you had all kinds of different types of kids that were out there. You had the bully, you had the guy that's off reading a book in the corner, you had another one that was the jock, and his analogy tied it to the other countries that were around Croatia. And if I remember correctly, I think he pretty much said the Serbs were the bullies.
Yep.
Yep, that's exactly what he said.
Yeah. Very, very knowledgeable, firsthand accounts from this guy.
Yeah.
He was the star of the trip.
Well, he made that tour authentic. He couldn't have been more authentic. He could have lobbed a couple of hand grenades and that would have made it more authentic, but that's about it. So anyway, this Vis Bay I showed you a few minutes ago, what Vis Bay is on the island. And so they built a submarine base on this island. And so Tito, which was a ruler of the area in Yugoslavia at the time, anyway, you're going to see this was where this bay is where the submarines would come in to go into the base. And most of these little villages in the background, it turned out, were built by the commanders of these submarine bases, because they found this beautiful little village where normally you couldn't have built a house, but they ended up retiring there. Okay, here is the submarine base. They ended up building it many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, but it may be longer. It would be longer. Anyway, it goes back quite a ways, but it's a submarine tunnel that we're able to walk into. One of the negatives of what they built here was that they didn't get the specs correctly. And so he explained to us that when the submarine was in there and it was high tide, that they forgot about high tide. The clearances, it couldn't get out on high tide. Anyway, it was Do you remember any other story about this, this tunnel, Jim?
Jim?
No, I think they said it took them 3 years to actually build, and one of the downfalls of it was high tide. They hadn't figured the high tide, and I think they were only off by like a foot, but a foot is a lot.
Right. Yeah, so anyway, it got used, but I don't think it got used very heavily. So
But the
on this
whole idea was to
island-
hide. They were trying to hide their submarine. So it was planned that this could be put the sub in and then sort of close some of the entrances to it.
Yep. So interesting thing, again, I showed you in that little bay before all houses and where the commanders of the military ended up building homes. Well, again, after the Croatian War, some of these guys had lots of money and were able to bamboozle. So up on this hill, if you look up there on Vis, this guy ended up coming in with huge amounts of money and built this house. And you could see he built it into the architecture of the hill. It fits nothing of the island other than it does blend itself. But anyway, he said it was a Croatian commander that built that. So anyway, but you can see how beautiful the area is with the wine country in front of it. On the other side of the island was this little town of Komiza. And it's a town of 1,400 people. So we drove down into it. You can see on the far side, it's just a little fishing village. And this is the town of Komiza. I mean, it's spectacularly beautiful. Okay, on the other side of the island, this was another very interesting piece. And this comes out of World War II. This was a landing strip. It doesn't look like a big deal, but during the war, when bombers Spitfires and Hurricanes would attack Italy or attack the Germans, and if they got shot up and they couldn't make it back to base, the island of Vis, V-I-S we're on, is in the middle of the Adriatic. And it was a place the Americans had secured to be able to allow Spitfires, Hurricanes, and the different bombers to land if they needed to get out or be able to, if they were shot up. So this island and this landing strip, I'm going to show you a couple of pictures, and I took these off the internet. Here is one of the pictures of of that landing strip. So one of the pilots who used the facilities was George McGovern, a B-24 pilot who later earned fame as a U.S. Senator and Democratic presidential nominee. McGovern's plane had one engine out and another one in flames after being hit by flak, by anti-aircraft gunfire, and he was unable to land, but he was able to get to Vis. And this is how one of the reasons he survived was having this landing strip on Vis. So another interesting story about so many of these airplanes, Spitfires and different ones, as they came in, they couldn't make it onto the landing strip. So around the island are so many airplanes that couldn't make it, that it is an amazing dive spot if you want to go see World War II airplanes that couldn't make it onto the landing strip, onto the island. And you can see their possible human remains. But anyway, it's an interesting place that if somebody wanted to do some diving there, it turns out there are 65 underwater wrecks of B-24 Liberators and B-17 Fortresses.
And Bernie, there's something else. It was a very short runway, and they had when they landed, they had to hit it hot. I mean, that they came in very fast and hard and short. So it was a very difficult place to land. And obviously, if your plane is in distress, it made it much more so than what it would normally be.
Yeah, it's I mean it's part of the world that you'd never heard of Vis and how important this place was. Anyway, on the island of Vis, that's the end of that landing strip. But this is the little town of Vis, and so in the evening time, we sent Mark out to go find us a restaurant, and he walks up these stairs, and here's a little entrance. We walked in, so behind Ann and Yangqin there. So we walked in. Here's this beautiful courtyard. This family has made it into a restaurant, and so just another beautiful little place that we stumbled across. So after we had our dinner, this was probably the most interesting bar I've ever been in my life. So on this island of Vis, because it has so much history and so many people have attacked it, whether it's the Austrians, the French, the Italians, so that this little bar it's just filled with memorabilia. Yeah, all 25, I think he said 2,500 pieces of memorabilia from all the different warring factions, whether it's uniforms or hats or sabers. And anyway, it was just, so we ended up stumbling in here and we had a gin and tonic. And in front of Mark and I, these are our gin and tonics. And they were probably the most outrageous gin and tonics I've ever had in my life. They gave us this, here was the menu. He says, here, choose your gin, put a circle around what you want, choose your tonic, decide, choose your garnishments. So this is what I chose, and that was our drink. Anyway, it was an amazing place, amazing bar, and we're the only people in it. These are just some of the memorabilia shots of all the different people who have attacked that or have taken over that island of Vis. So we stumbled back to our boat. There's Roko again. This is how we would find it in the evening time. So the next day we went to another island called Hvar, and so the port was not ready for us. So they sent out this little I don't know what you call it, but a survival boat. So we all jumped aboard so they could take us to shore. And here's Jim deciding he's going to take the helm and and see if he can steer it. So but you can see what I mean, going from this beautiful 157-foot boat to this barely functioning, whatever this was, boat. Anyway, we all got aboard. So Hvar, so we're off to the right, way off to the right. This is the port of Hvar. And you can see here, there are two boats. You can see this boat that is bow out first in a second again, but the boat in the background is a ferry boat that is coming from Split. And why our boat couldn't get in there was because it was a ferry boat during the day. That's why they shuffled us in. So there's the boat again, the bow out boat. Our boat was off to the right, but this is a little town called Hvar. As the afternoon went on, our boat was able to come in. Roko was able to come in. Another 160-foot boat went next to us. But you can see the private boat that is stern in here that you've seen in the other shots. Another great shot of us. This was all of us having dinner again on shore, because every evening you would find a good restaurant to have dinner at, and you can see, I mean, it's phenomenal food at a very, very reasonable price. But that was our motley crew right there. Again, the boat in the evening time, you can see the Hvar, the fort on top of the hill in the background. Again, we're in another island called Milna, another stacked full of large 150, 160-foot boats, but lots of smaller boats. A little bit of the island that had been bombed or was burned out during the 1992 war. They haven't resurrected. One of the reasons is that they have ownership problems with these properties, because it turned out back in the early Croatian days, different people would own this. You'd have like 5 owners to this building. Well, one owner maybe went to America, another owner went to South Africa, and 2 owners lived there. Well, the people in America and South Africa don't want this to be rebuilt. And anyway, there's lots of conflict. So you see these buildings all over the place that have been burned out and bombed out that haven't been rebuilt because they have ownership issues. Just a cute little bicycle along the shore. More art along the island. Art, I mean, the interesting thing, they have art all over the island. So this is a bronze statue that had a net at the end of it. Beautiful little shot of the town, but you can see how much sailing can be done there. These are just boats obviously in right now. We're now coming back to Split. And so this is kind of coming to the end of our tour, but Split right now, you're going to see, if you see it's hard to see behind the trees, but what's behind the trees is called the Diocletian Palace that was built in the year 300 AD. And this is obviously a depiction of what it originally looked like, including what it still looks like. One of the things to note here, the front of it where the boats would come in, there was only one door to get into this palace. And that door is still there. So that corner right there that you can see of the palace, that is the upper right-hand corner of the palace. So you can see how far the Adriatic originally came in and how it's changed. This is another picture of the Diocletian Palace of during when the Romans had it, of what it looked like. And again, you'll see that one door that would allow you into the palace. This again, just a top shot. I didn't take this of the Diocletian Palace. So, Jim, all of us went through that one door to come into it, and underneath the palace is where we are right now. And what this was originally the garbage dump. And so through 400, 500, 600 years, whenever they would put garbage, this originally was totally filled with garbage over the thousands or hundreds of years. Any other comments about this wonderful place, Jim? Either one of you guys?
Great shopping.
Yeah, well, it's now turned into, the garbage dump is now turned into a shopping area for tourists. But this is where the palace would dump their garbage. You can see why the doors were so high, because it was a dump place. This is not my shop, but this is the inside of the palace. The backside of the palace, you know, it's hard to get shots of it because so many different civilizations and marauders have attacked these places and have rebuilt them and built them in different styles. So you see all the add-ons over the hundreds of years. Again, this is the palace. It was just a great shot near the end of the day of us. And that is the end.
Very good. Very, very good.
Great presentation. It doesn't seem like there were a lot of people. Was this in season or out of season or what when you guys were there?
Out of season. We were there middle to end of September. The RV was the 14th through the 21st, and the boat was the 21st through the 28th. And it was cooler than normal. But you don't want to be there in August because you've got all the bodies, and it could be 100 degrees.
Yeah, yeah. Great planning.
Who
That
are the
was Mary.
insurers? What other tourism was there? I mean, in terms of where was everybody from? All over Europe?
Are you saying the other people on the boat or?
No, just, yeah, the general tourists that you saw on shore.
Okay,
I
so the
don't really
people,
know the answer to that.
Okay, I
Barry's the
can-
one that engages everybody.
anyway, I find people interesting. So so especially with Mark taking us into these places, these motorhome parks, you got to really talk to people. And the vast majority of the people were either Italians, Austrians, but they all came from Europe, right? They were, because it was a motorhome place, they've been coming here for years because this used to be the cheapest, best place to go until Turkey opened up. And then the Europeans started to move then to Turkey. And so it's mostly Europeans. What you end up having is, you'll see is Dubrovnik, especially in Split, cruise ships come in, right? And so it will be 1,000 people will be dumped off. And so all of a sudden for 3 or 4 hours, the area will be just jam full of people, and it's all the cruise ships. And it's the last thing that you want to do when you go to these places, be dumped off into Dubrovnik, which is such a phenomenal town, or Split, to be able to see it and be there with your 1,000 best friends, because it's not the way you want to see it.
No, and I think what Barry was saying, it had been extremely hot there prior to us arriving. I mean, 100, 105, I believe, I heard. So it was miserable. And with COVID getting over, there was a lot of pent up demand of people traveling. So it was, prior to us getting there, it was crazy. Airports, everything. And we actually hit it pretty darn good.
We have a really good Holland representative by the name of Renger Sitzma here, who's sitting in the background very quietly. But tell us about the vacation schedule of the people in the Netherlands, which we don't understand here, Renger.
Well, our vacation schedule is mostly connected to the school holidays in the Netherlands. And it's mostly for school kids 6 weeks a year in the months July and August. So I do not know what's typical about that. That's what we do for years here.
But that's a main travel time, Ringer, is all I was trying to say. I know that different regions in the Netherlands allow people to go on vacations at different times to more or less stagger them so that things are not overwhelmed. Is that not correct?
That's absolutely correct. Within the European Union and also within a small country like the Netherlands, where I'm sitting right now, there is a government policy of spreading school kids and their parents across the season, across the periods. So, for example, in the Netherlands, we have a division between the north of the Netherlands, the middle and the south part. And their holiday start at different periods within between 1 or 2 weeks difference.
So they try to stagger the people, but the problem is with us older people who get retired and have time, that we try to not, I mean, it's not my favorite time to travel in August because everybody is just traveling. So September is, somebody asked about the time, that's the best time to go. That would be the best time to go there because the Europeans are wanting to go back home. And so there are less people there.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Great
I don't
job, Bernie.
It's an interesting part of the world. And I think, unfortunately, I believe it's going to change a little bit now with more activity because Croatia in January became part of the EU, which now makes it, I don't know. What does it make it, Renger? How does it make it better or worse?
I don't know how it will play out. Mostly it will mean that the prices can go up a little bit there, just because of simple reason that a lot of human rights are in the end must be paid. And the European Union has a higher degree of law protection than Croatia had so far. So I think it will be a little bit more expensive to travel to Croatia in the upcoming years. But in return, the people of Croatia get the protection of the European Union, which is on a higher level than their own national laws.
But unfortunately, I believe that this exit of migration of the young people leaving Croatia will even get worse now, right? Because now every young person can go to wherever he wants to go to school or to travel, right? And so they've been losing population for the last 10 years. And the only thing they've got going for themselves in Croatia right now is tourism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true.
And I think that the Croatians that we spoke to were quite concerned of going to the euro because it was going to cost them a fair amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes,
And they don't,
an entrance to the euro comes at a high cost, and they have to comply with an incredible amount of EU rules before even their request for entrance is considered. So yes, it will mean a lot.
When I was there in June, most of the hoteliers and restaurants were saying they expected at least a 25% increase in costs. And also, as you quite rightly pointed out, they felt more youngsters would leave Croatia, which would reduce a relatively small population quite considerably.
Yep.
But it is as it is. The youngsters cannot live from a nice view, and they have to make a living. So the Croatians have to diversify their economy, or they will still lose more youngsters. And that's not too bad for us because we need them here in Germany, in the Netherlands. Yes, it's a problem to them maybe, but it's not too bad for us. We need them in the hospitals. We need them everywhere. Generally, you can say now they are in the EU. They're a member of the Schengen area, as you already mentioned. Mass tourism is always destroying some innocence or how do you say, the authentical character of an area like Croatia. It's beautiful, and it's beautiful because of the iron wall. All the time it was hidden behind the iron wall, and now it's how do you say, it's flowering. But in the end, in 10 or 20 years, I don't know. It's well, as when the cruise boats keeping arrive, just look at Venice. It's dramatically, what happens over there. Mass tourism is killing the beauty of the area. So you went, you have seen it now, and keep it in remembrance, because in 20 or 30 years it's all gone. I'm afraid.
I don't think most of us will be here, Baron, in 20 or 30 years.
Well, that could be. Okay.
Anyway, it's a phenomenal place in the world to go see. I mean, it's just, I mean, I can't say enough for it. I love Europe, but the authenticity of what it is is
Yes.
in Croatia right now.
Mhm. And tourists are always looking for authenticity. They want the real Croatians. And
If I want to go to
and that's-
McDonald's.
yeah.
Yeah, anyway. So I'm glad everybody enjoyed it. Any other comments or thoughts or?
No, I was just gonna say that we actually hit it just right in many ways. And another reason at that time, the euro versus the dollar was at its low. So we were a little lucky from a monetary standpoint that we hit probably the low. It was nice, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked
No.
like that motorhome was a totally luxurious motorhome, and I'm just wondering what, what the cost of it was to rent the thing for, several weeks. Is it on a daily basis or per mile or what did it cost you approximately?
I don't know the answer to that. Barry may. The Mark who did the rental is not with us on the Zoom call, but we just tried to pitch in for the expenses, and that was an interesting cost to look at all the fuel that we're paying the cost in fuel, but we were happy to do that. But I don't know what the actual rental of the RV was.
Yeah.
The funny thing, I don't have the numbers either, Joe, but all I can tell you is it doesn't matter, because to be able to see Croatia and see it in that way, I mean, I couldn't have rented a car with 6 people and enjoyed it as much as I did. I mean,
you park right next to the ocean every night, and
oh God, yeah, exactly. And you had all your stuff with you. There's no packing and unpacking, and I mean, Mark and Yangqin, what they saw, I wish that Mark was on, but I mean, he saw phenomenal things, and I mean, he learned things. He parked in Berlin, and he had no idea that he was supposed to get a special permit to park a motorhome.
So there was no issue with
town.
that.
So a policeman came out and, you have no permit. What is your permit? And so Mark said, so he ended up leaving Berlin. He got kicked out of a couple of places. He didn't have the right permit, as if somebody who rents a motorhome drives across country knows about every city's permits.
Yeah.
But that's typical European.
I mean, I'm just thinking, though, you park an RV in San Jose somewhere like that, leave it for 12 hours while you're on a boat or something, you'd come back and the thing would probably be ransacked.
Yeah.
We can make it into a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
Whatever it was. Anyway, I don't remember the exact cost. I'll try to find out from Mark, and you can ask me later, but whatever the cost, I mean, the experience is just priceless.
Yeah.
Barry, I'm going to sign off from Jim and Lanette. Thank you very much. Brought back a lot of really good memories. Thank you.
Okay, Jim,
great.
take care of yourself. Nice
Okay.
to see you again. Anyway,
Thanks, Barry. It was
Yeah.
really great. I've never been in that part of the world, so it was fantastic to see that.
yeah, it's a special part. I think that there's more. I mean, I would like to go to Bosnia-Herzegovina. I'd like to actually go to Serbia. I don't know if I'll be able to, but Romania, that whole area is just, it's just like a bloom opening up right now.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. That's amazing. It will be interesting to see how it unfolds over the next even 10 years. For sure.
Wendy,
Anyway,
good to see you again.
it's good to see you too. Are we having another, is there another get together in the works?
Hey, Eric,
Yeah. Sure.
Eric, Mr. Thompson, you are on stage right now.
Yes. Well, were you going to? I don't know. Were you doing another one next week, Barry? No.
No, you're.
Okay. So I'll I'll pick up one. Yeah, I've got a couple, so I can't remember, by the way, guys, did I ever do Norway?
9.
Okay, so I'll
don't
do
think
that one.
so.
So, no, I don't think so.
But you know, just in ending there, when you were talking about the weather in September, Elshot and I did one of these small boat cruises with OAT, Overseas Adventure Travels. And back in, oh geez, I can't, let me just, oh, a good number of years ago, what was it? Oh, 2009. 2009. And it started off in Athens. And then we went through the Corinth Canal into the Adriatic. And then from there we went north and we stopped at most of the places, I think.
Dubrovnik now.
Yeah, Dubrovnik. But we also went to
Kotor.
Kotor, which was in
Montenegro.
Montenegro. And then from there we kept going north and we did the islands. We did Var and Korčula. And then we went to Split. And then, but from Split, we then went, that was the boat tour. And then part of it was the land tour. And then it went from there to Zagreb, and we did a few days there. And then we went into Slovenia. And from Slovenia, we went to Ljubljana, I think, the capital. And then from there to Bled, which is in the Slovenian Alps, which was absolutely beautiful. And that was like 3 weeks, 3 weeks. So there's a mixture of small boat. It took 50 people, 25 couples. And they did a decent job. And that was June. And the weather was nice. It wasn't, in Athens, it was hot, but the rest of the time it wasn't. It was nice, good travel weather, you know. So
Good to know.
but I don't know if that was a normal June, you know, like nowadays, what's normal, right?
Yeah.